the sentience of pests. Well, I call them pests, but they're not really pests, but sadly they're deemed as pests. But it's gulls with me, Kevin Newell. So who am I? My name is Kevin Newell. I am the owner and founder of the wildlife business Humane Wildlife Solutions, which was formed in 2012 with the aim to offer people and businesses a non-lethal, ethical alternative to conventional pest control. So my approach to dealing with so-called pest species is to never harm them. It's always about finding solutions to wildlife problems without causing any harm. You know, ever since we founded OneKind, been a very big supporter of the work we do, and likewise of my work as they do. It was again good tonight to talk to you about wildlife. Now, I work with gulls throughout the UK, helping people overcome conflicts. And you probably all be aware of the headlines in the papers and the media stories ran in the summer about gulls attacking people, the evil creatures from above, attacking dogs and children, and so on and so forth. But what's really behind these stories, you know, what's really going on there with the gulls? Hopefully tonight I can shed a bit of light on that and help you understand gulls a little bit more and why they behave the way they do. I don't think these birds are pests. I think they're absolutely amazing. Now, I've had the chance over the years to help raise and rehabilitate over hundreds of gulls. And this time I've got to know them really, really, really well. And not just them as species, but them as individuals. And it's a term, I guess, a lot of people wouldn't really think about gulls as individuals and, you know, how different gulls behave in different ways, much to humans, I guess. But when I'm not running the business, Humane Wildlife Solutions, I do help and work in wildlife rehabilitation. And it's these experiences from working and rescuing and raising gulls, which I'll be sharing with you tonight. So as you can see the little gull on the screen here, this is one of the very first gulls. I think this could be Tracy, I believe. One of the very first gulls I took in when I was living up in Aberdeen. She had been orphaned and me and my partner took her on. She came to stay with us for a few days before going on to a wildlife hospital. I don't know what people think of gulls looking at them like that, but I personally think they're absolutely adorable creatures. Now, pests to some is the head of this title, because gulls are a pest to some people. Not everyone. You know, a lot of people won't have conflicts with gulls, but the way the media pushes stories about them and the way people talk about them, sadly, a lot of people think they're pests, even though they're not really pests. Now, gulls, you know, why are they deemed a pest? You know, it's because maybe people will say they're being noisy or, you know, they're swooping people, but they live in our urban areas now, and they come to our urban areas to raise their chicks. The behaviour of urban nesting could be down to us humans culling them in their natural sites and forcing them away from their coastal homes into our urban environment. So I was doing a bit of research into gulls, and at the moment, I don't know if you can see, one of the books I'm reading is Gulls by John C. Colson. Now, it goes on there in depth about gulls live in our urban areas. This is where the conflicts occur and where people see them as pests. They've not been in our urban areas for a great deal of time. You know, it's only maybe 20, 30 years, maybe a bit more or so, especially up here in Scotland. But it's when they're in these urban areas, that's when these conflicts start to occur. Now, they started to move into our urban areas at the same time when large gull culls were happening, especially in Scotland. The Isle of May was a puffin colony, and they culled gull there by the hundreds. Chicks and adults removed the nests to try and protect the puffins. But sadly, you know, their cull actually had an effect on the puffins as well as the gulls through disturbance. And it's actions like these kind of culls which they believe could have pushed the gulls into our urban areas. So when you're wondering why gulls are nesting in our urban areas, it's because sadly, humans were culling them in the natural areas that they were nesting. You know, for a species that only lives in our cities for 3 months until the chicks are fledged, can they be really deemed a pest? Now, there's a very, very small percentage of gulls that actually live in our towns and cities all the time. Very, very small. Mostly you'll see gulls come into cities when it's not breeding season. They'll forage a little bit and then they'll go off again. Most gulls spend a lot of their time foraging on large open green places. So you're talking the countryside, on coastal areas where they'll naturally forage. But you will sometimes see gulls on playing fields, school fields, things like that, because there's good natural food for them to have there. So the play to gulls. This is actually on the right-hand side. For the Love of Gulls is one of the posters I had designed for the business, because I wanted to change the narrative of how people viewed gulls. You know, these are birds which, sadly, every year in Scotland, hundreds, if not thousands, are killed under license, and sadly, people without licenses are killing them. Now, a lot of people are not aware, but some of the gull species, like the herring gull, are actually a red-listed species, and some other species are amber-listed, meaning their populations are in steep decline. Now, they're in steep decline because interference from humans, sadly. And, you know, we're working at the moment to try and readdress the balance and try and find non-lethal solutions to these conflicts, so we don't ever have to be in a situation where licenses are being issued every year for gulls to be culled. As you can see from the poster, just how bad some species have declined over the years. And you can see that the numbers on their populations declining. And it is really, really sad that we're in this situation. We are trying, working with the Scottish Government and Nature Scotland at the moment to find a new way to work with gulls and their licenses, and it's something that's ongoing. And we've been having amazing conversations with gull experts all over the country about finding alternative ways to deal with gulls so they don't cause conflicts with people in urban areas, but also at the same time, we're not having a detrimental impact on their population numbers. So the stories of gulls. So this is just a really, really brief one. You see the gull looking at you here. This is actually one that I raised, and her name is Weggy, and she would follow me around. She was a wild bird, don't get me wrong. She was raised as a chick, and she was released on site at the rescue in Aberdeenshire. But you know, she stayed about. She'd go away for a few days and come back again, and she'd often come and find me when I'm working outside with other animals. This is a photo here of her dropping by just to say hi. I have a really lovely story, me and Weggy. We had our water supply go out, and I had to go down the field to the well. I went down the well hatch and I come back up again, and she was sitting no further than what, a foot away from my head. And she sat there. She wasn't scared of me. She knew who I was. She knew me as an individual because she didn't show this behavior to everyone, despite being numerous people involved in raising her, and she wasn't tamed in any way. This was a gull who'd learned to trust me and almost became my friend, if you want to say. A gull I'm very fond of, and I'm no longer up in Aberdeenshire, but I have been told by the rescue up there that she is still about, and she's, you know, that's her home, living alongside other animals and people. Like I said earlier, gulls never used to be urban living birds, but humans have both attracted and driven them to our urban areas. Now, I touched on this briefly when I was saying about how these culls of gulls in their natural spaces, like the Isle of May, for example, it's thought to have driven gulls away from their natural places and into our urban places. And if you look at our towns and cities, all these lovely roofs that they can raise their chicks on, it's perfect for them. You know, they ain't got to worry about predation of their chicks by other predators. There's usually little interference from humans, but we provide such lovely places for them to breed on. Having one brood a year, usually of 1 to 2 chicks. I've come across the rare occasion when there's more than 1 or 2. Usually the third chick can't always be guaranteed to come from the same parents and may have joined from another nest site in the same area. And these chicks in our urban areas, they'll stay in our towns and cities, no longer using them 3 months until they're flying. They go through a period of being really small and fluffy, but they grow really, really quick. If you live in a town or city where there are gulls, you will be well aware that once these chicks get old enough and start being a bit more adventurous and trying to fly, they often fall off the roofs onto the streets below. And they're not usually down there for a great deal of time. They're just not got that maiden flight nailed down very well. And it's in times like this that, you know, they may need help. So if you come across a gull which is in immediate danger, you know, be near a busy road, or there's dogs around that may be chasing it, or people are trying to harm them, I'd always recommend calling, you know, local wildlife rescues, so like the Newark or Hazelhead, or even the SSPCA, and just get some advice on what to do first. Sometimes it can be simply as just moving a gull over a fence into a safe area from where they are. You know, and when they leave the site, they spend most of the time, much to, how to word this one. So a lot of people think gulls stay in our cities all the time, but once these gulls are up on the wing, they often go out to the countryside. Now, living in the countryside up in Aberdeenshire, you would find as soon as the young started to learn to fly, you would find flocks, and we're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of gulls in one area. I think we estimated one up near the rescue that we came across once, and this was in the middle of summer when the gull chicks all left and gone off into big flocks. There must have been up to 5,000 gulls. And these weren't in towns or cities, these were foraging in fields in the countryside. You know, they spend time also foraging in rural areas. So they don't spend a lot of time in our towns and cities. It's just to breed there and raise their chicks. So, you know, I think as humans, we should be a bit more tolerant of this. There are ways you can live with gulls being on your house or on your business. It doesn't need to end up with gulls being harmed. And one of the things I find interesting about gulls is, you know, some species of them, I'll take a herring gull, for example, they will not be mature enough to breed until they're into their 4th season. And, you know, you think that these gulls, if their chicks are being killed and the adults are being culled and their eggs being removed, it can quickly have quite an impact on the numbers. If by mistake enough breeding adults are removed, there could be local population crashes with gulls. I don't know if there's any science backing this up, but it's something we need to be aware of because these are, you know, red listed species. We need to be protecting them more. One of the things I love about some of the gulls, especially lesser blackbacks, they will travel down all the way through the south of the UK. They'll go over into Europe, and they'll even go to the northern reaches of Africa. And they don't just stay in one place. One of the books, again, the one I was reading at the moment is Gold by John Colton. It's amazing with some of the research that book's based on of how far gulls will travel. You know, I remember reading a study about gulls by Bristol University in Bristol, and these gulls would go over to Wales, they'd go over to Ireland, and even go down to France as their range. They wouldn't just stay in one spot, so they travel quite a distance. And that's usually after the breeding season is done. And usually, you know, out of breeding season, they will travel great distances. Gulls also will form strong friendships and relationships, bonding for life with a partner. Now, this is usually the case. They'll stay together unless something happens to that partner, then they will find another one if that partner dies or goes missing for any reason. And again, raising gull chicks, you often do find some gulls prefer each other's company, so that they do, you know, form friendships. And when you release loads of gulls from wildlife rescue centres, we do them in big batches because these flocks tend to stay together when they're in the wild. And, you know, they know each other and they learn from each other. And that's really important when releasing gulls, raising gulls, is releasing them in groups because they learn from each other very quick. Some gull species can live over 30 years. Now, I've got a lovely story. We had a gull chick that come in at Newark a couple of years ago, and he was 22 years of age. He was actually older than some of the staff at the rescue centre. And the reason we knew this gull was 22 years of age is because he was ringed. He was caught and ringed in Dice, and he ended up being hit by a car 22 years later by travelling a very short distance up in Inverurie in Aberdeenshire. And it was just amazing to see that this gull had, you know, stayed at roughly the same area. And they do say if they don't go and breed back in the same place as they were born, they won't be too far away. And it was amazing just finding the history of this gull and who ringed him, when he was ringed, where he was ringed, and where he was found. So if you think gulls living up to 22 years or 30 years. Imagine the places and the things they're going to see and learn and you know, of their environment, of us humans in that time. It's a long time to live for a bird. And you know, some of the gulls you see in the skies around you, you know, they could be over 30 years old. So, to me, I think that's an incredible fact. So, Pokemon Gull. Bear with me in this one. I know it's a play in the word Pokemon Go, but this is a really exciting thing about gulls. You can learn a lot about gulls here. So, in the winter, in Scotland, we get loads of migrant gulls coming over. There's some really fantastic species you might be lucky to see. But, you know, there's no guarantee you're going to see some amazing species. So gulls can be exciting and fun. Now, every winter, you know, the UK sees a big influx of migrant gulls. They come over here to Scotland to overwinter, or even just as a part of their migratory route. So why is this a fun time? Well, you get a chance to see loads of gull species. You know, you can see maybe ivory gulls, which have been seen in, we had some actually around here in North Ayrshire. You know, Sabine gulls, just to name a few. There's so many amazing gulls that use the UK, whether to overwinter or to pass through. So now we're getting all these exciting gulls coming. We have gulls coming from Iceland. We have gulls coming from the northern and western parts of Europe. We have gulls coming from Scandinavia. And the best thing about it is some of these gulls will have rings. So the Pokemon Gull reference is here. When we have all these overwintering gulls, get a pair of binoculars. If you know where an area there's loads of gulls that are congregating, whether it be near landfill or in fields near you, get some binoculars on to see if you can find any of, I think it's Dalek rings, the big colourful rings with their identification on them. And with that information, you can submit it to different organisations. And these organisations can tell you all about this gull, where they were ringed, where they were raised, you know, where they've been from other sightings. And it's amazing. You can learn so much about a bird just by a little ring on his leg. And I'm not meaning like the little metal rings, because you only ever read them if the bird's in captivity or it's died. I'm talking about the big colourful rings that you can see. So this is one of the amazing things. And it's, you know, with Rory, who the black-headed gull, sorry, the common gull we had up in Aberdeenshire, we got to know from his ring, like I said, he was 22 years of age. And I think it's a really exciting time. I was volunteering with a local wildlife organisation just last week, and next to the area we were working on is a recycling plant, and there were hundreds of gulls. And I wish I had binoculars, so I could have sat there all day and just watched these gulls and try and pick out ones with rings on and learn about the individuals. So every gull, you know, every gull has a story behind them. Every gull has a story to tell. Sadly, it's only the ones with rings on and the ones that we're really going to find out a lot about what they do. So tag and track is a tag and tracking thing about gulls. It's done by Clyde Muirshell Regional Park over here in, I think it's Renfrewshire they're based in. And go check out the website. There's some gulls and you can have a look at the data and where they've been. And it's amazing to see how gulls that were over in North Ayrshire, went to Renfrewshire, we spent time in Hamilton, come back over again. And it's just incredible to see and be able to track and trace these gulls over the areas they go. So if you want a little bit of fun tonight, go check this out. I highly recommend it and learn a little bit about how our gulls behave and where they go. And you'll see they don't spend all their time just in one area on, you know, your roof screaming at you in the summer or dive bombing you. Oh, there should be another one in there somewhere. So I'm going to go about my friendship with gulls. So this is me and a gull that I raised called Popeye up in Aberdeenshire. Popeye sadly had a disability. He had a damaged eye, which he was hoping for him to recover from. And over the years, I've raised many gulls. So I'll go through a few of their stories. So Dino and Lacey were two very young gulls that we raised. We knew it was Dino and Lacey because even though they were in with a group of 40 other gull chicks, they always stuck together and they always came over to say hi. Dino was just a sweetheart. He'd come over and say hi first, and then Lacey would join him. And it was always these two that greeted us when we went to see them in the morning, whether we had food or not. Now, Lacey's name was Lacey because she liked to play with shoelaces on your boots. But as she got older, in her pen, and when she got released, that was it. You know, yes, she saw us as the caregiver, as people bringing in food, but you know, she was never tamed, and neither was Dino, and then they both went off into the wild with no troubles. Weggy, who I mentioned, Weggy came to us as a little chick. She'd been kicked off a petrol station forecourt roof and subsequently broke her leg. Now, we managed to get her through the wildlife hospital. She recovered, but she never really gained full use of that leg again. But she is the gull who, after nearly 3 years, maybe even more now, is still living up in Aberdeenshire. And, you know, she's a fantastic gull, a completely wild bird, but one who I had a really good friendship with. Even in the mornings, she'd come and peck on our skylight to wake us up so she could maybe get a bit of food on the food rounds, which was nice. We had Popeye, who you can see again in the picture here. Popeye was a very lovely bird that we raised who had a damaged eye. We had Dragon. Now, Dragon was a herring gull, still is a herring gull. I don't think he spends much time at the rescue anymore. But when he released himself on site. He was a very, very big bird for a gull chick. But he was very cheeky, full of character. Like, there's not many gulls I know like Dragon and his individuality. So he would often raid food of any kind he could catch and get hold of. If there was no food, he would raid the food tray bucket. So he'd pull all the dishes and bowls out and drag them across the site. If there was mischief to have, Dragon would definitely be in it. But you know, he stayed there about a year or so with us before going away with other flocks of gulls and then coming back every now and again just to check in on us. We like to think, again, a wild gull raised, but again, so full of character, so full of just all his own little traits. And you know, even Dino, Lacey, Weggy, Popeye, and Dragon, none of them were the same as individuals. Just like we all are very different as individuals. I know from the gulls I've worked with, they are too. Now, DJ is a very funny little character. He's a black-headed gull. He was, again, raised and released up at the rescue. And he went away for, you know, when he got released, if they could fly away, then they could self-release. And that's what he did. And he went away. And he came back after maybe a month or two later, and he used to come and find us. And he remembered the food rounds that we used to do in the morning. And he would end up waiting on one of the aviaries to see if he could get a little treat or two. And once he had his treat, he'd be off again and disappear. We wouldn't see him for maybe a couple of weeks again. And one day I remember he actually came back with a friend, a complete wild gull that he'd befriended in the wild, and he brought him back to the rescue. And we subsequently gave him a little treat each, and then they went again. DJ was, and I think he still visits the rescue now. So it's a place to him that he loves to come to for whatever reason. But again, it's a gull, you know, we saw grow up, go into the wild and bring a complete wild friend back with him to the rescue. And again, it's just, I want to give you a little bit more into, you know, gulls and how they think. And, you know, DJ is a funny little gull, and he used to shout on us as well. You'd hear him shouting as you're feeding the other birds. Now, I hope this will work for all. This is when we first started, you know, helping rescuing gulls and learning about them. We had Lucky, Shannon, and Freddie. Now, these are gulls that we were looking after for a few days until they went off to Wildlife Rescue Centre. And every morning, just so we can make sure they got out and about, they had this big garden that they can go and play in during the day under supervision, because we want to make sure any cats or anything came in and got them. But this is our flight training 2017 video. So we joked it was their flight training school, and I'll just let you watch it. It's only a short video of them flapping their wings, having a good flap around, you know, and this is what you would see when they come off the roofs. They wouldn't fly straight away to begin with, and they usually take a little bit of time before these gulls were ready to take to the wing and go off into the wild. But all these, as far as I understand, went in off to the rescue and then got released. Try and go to the next slide. So that's the end of my short talk about gulls. One of the things I want to say is, obviously you all know about OneKind and amazing work they do. So with all the fantastic success OneKind is having helping our wildlife, please, if you can, do our bit by supporting their campaigns and donate where you can, or even just share their post. It all helps. You know, OneKind have done so many amazing achievements looking after our mountain hares and just adding so much to protecting the wildlife in our amazing country of Scotland. And, you know, they're driving real change through our Scottish wildlife. And they can only do this with everyone's continued support. So I just want to say big thanks to OneKind for, firstly, allowing me to do another talk for them. We done one in the summer, which was really successful, but also thanks to OneKind for all the amazing work you're doing. So just a quick summary. I hope you've learned some new lovely facts about gulls, and hopefully you see them in a different light. You know, they're not monsters the media like to portray them as, but they're living sentient beings who just want to raise their families in an own and safe place and in peace, just like humans, I guess, want to raise their families without, you know, being harmed. And remember, these birds, they're all individual. There's individual as all of us. Each one of us as humans are individual to each other. So are these birds. And, you know, they may all look the same to you, and you may all punish them with the same brush that they're swooping and being noisy. But underneath that, underneath those feathers in that little brain of theirs, there's an individual in there, and they all like different things, and they behave in different ways. And if you ever get a chance to befriend a wild gull and get to know them, I'd highly recommend it. They're not aggressive birds. They're not dangerous birds. They're very misrepresented, misunderstood birds. One of my favorites. So you remember, if a gull's swooping at you in the summer, first of all, I think you're lucky you got your home, or where you are is being a place where gulls want to raise their families. It's a safe space for them. Try and understand it. Just, you know, it's a natural instinct for all of us earthlings to want to protect our young, be it us humans or be it these amazing gulls. And, you know, we don't own this planet, but we share it with gulls and other species. So we need to, you know, just remember that fact, I think, at some time.